Check this out. This is the real deal, a 1963 Hofner 501 bass, and we're going to compare it to a V62 Mercy reissue from 2015. But before we look at the differences between the two, let's look at the specs of the vintage Hofner. It was distributed by Selmer, and so it comes with a Selmer case. It has the small control plate, long tailpiece, staple Novasonic pickups with small surrounds, and the script Hofner decal. It has the cat's head tuners and a 3-piece neck. Paul McCartney's bass had strip tuners, of course, and a 2-piece neck. The body is stamped 1963 inside, and the pots date to 1962. Like most Hofner basses, this bass had some modifications. It had a neck reset. The nut was replaced. And one bobbin in the treble pickup was rewound. And now the comparison. Here's a close-up view of the side of the vintage Hofner. Notice how dark the sides are. When you put them side by side, you can really see the difference. The vintage one is much darker on the sides, and the reissue is much more blonde and has much less spray. Other than the variations in color, overall they look the same. Obviously the reissue is specifically made to Paul McCartney specs, so it has the strip tuners and the 2-piece neck. You can see here that the neck heels differ and that the reissue is a little bit wider. Another subtle but interesting difference is the pickup spacing between the two. The vintage, when measuring from the top of the neck pickup to the bottom of the treble pickup, is 7¼ inches in spacing. The reissue is 7 inches. So on the vintage guitar, the treble pickup is pushed back 1/4 inch more toward the tailpiece. Another easy to see difference is that the teacup knobs on the vintage one have a silver reflective foil, and on the reissue it's a gold reflective foil. If you look closely, you can also see that the switches are a little different in color. The vintage switches are white plastic, and the reissue switches are in a cream off-white colored plastic. Some of the Hofner basses in the 90s did have the white plastic switches, and at some time in the late 90s, maybe early 2000s, they switched over to the cream color. Another interesting difference is the shape of the headstock. On the left, you can see that the reissue has a much sharper edge at the bottom, almost like a bat wing, whereas on the vintage one, the edge is much smoother. Also, the logos are slightly different. The reissue has a slightly thicker script. Another difference is that the reissue bridges have smaller string guides. The vintage string guides are a lot fatter. Another difference is the placement of the input jack. On the vintage, you can see that it's further out away from the tailpiece. Also, you can see that the input jack has a washer behind it, and I've seen that on a lot of vintage Hofners. Here's a look at the cases and how they differ. Hofner did try to capture a taste of the vintage Selmer case, and even though the Selmer case looks really cool, the reissue case is a lot better for the bass. The bottom of the reissue case is cool because you can actually stand up the case on these 4 little coasters. Kind of a cool added design. One of the things that's really surprising about this guitar is that the action is fantastic. It's really low, and that the intonation is really good as well. You hear all these horror stories about, McCartney's intonation is out and he's got to take it to Mandolin Brothers, get the intonation fixed, but I lucked out. This particular one has fantastic action, as you can see, and the intonation's really good, and you'll hear that as well. I have to admit that the action on the reissue is just as good. It's really low, and the intonation is spot on. The neck is a little wider than on the vintage one, so I do prefer the vintage neck just because I like a thinner neck. but it's really comfortable. It's just got a little bit more thickness from fretboard to back. Today we're going to record the basses with an AKG D20. This is the mic that was used on Ringo's kick drum most of the time, but it was also used on bass occasionally as well. For this sound comparison, I'm going to keep the settings on the 1964 Bassman exactly the same. And the switches are set up the same on both basses, 2 up, 1 down. The song that I'm playing the basses on for this comparison is called All I Want Is to Let Go, a song that I wrote and released. It's available on iTunes and every streaming platform. And I actually did use the Hofner reissue when I recorded it. So the only thing I'm going to do is just change guitars, and it's going to be the exact same signal. It's just going to be the guitar difference that you hear. When it boils down to it, it's all about the player. There are subtle differences in the guitars, and the sound is a little bit different. I think that I prefer the sound of the vintage because it sticks out in the mix a little bit more, has a little bit more of a treble edge to the tone. They both have this sort of woofy undertone to it, but the reissue just is a tad muddier, in my opinion. You'd be very, very happy if you're looking for a Hofner bass to get one of the reissues. They're well made and they sound great, and I have recorded with them, and they're great guitars.